Now, when you're 30, market volatility, that's an opportunity. But when you're 60, now it becomes a threat. And the difference between those two stages could define your entire retirement. So, ladies and gents, just here to drop a few cents. You're here to retire with Earl, breaking down the risk of investments. But let me get right to the point. And let's face it, folks, let's face it, market risk is part of investing. When you're young, it feels exciting. You got decades ahead. You're not worrying about too much. You could smooth out everything. But when you're in retirement or you're right before it, that same volatility could feel completely different because when you no longer have time to add to your savings, every downturn, it takes away something that you cannot get back, and that's time. Okay, the hidden cost of investment risk. And for retirees, it's not just about losing money, it's about losing security, financial security when you're in retirement. And that's what they call a sequence of returns. Why timing is so important to know. Now, there's a specific type of risk that catches a lot of folks off guard, and that's called a sequence of returns risk. Now, here's what that means, okay? If your portfolio, you experience a big loss early in retirement, right when you start withdrawing money, those withdrawals magnify the damage tenfold. So even if your average annual return looks the same on paper, the outcome is going to be dramatically worse simply because of the timing, right? Now, JP Morgan, they did a test, an asset management test in 2024. A retiree who experiences a 15% loss in the first 2 years of retirement could see their portfolio run out 10 years earlier than they expected, even with average long term returns, right? So that's not bad luck, folks. That's math. And it's a risk that most people don't even realize that they're taking when it comes time to your retirement. So you got to, I would say, there's like an emotional cost, right? So the emotional cost of risk, all right, the emotional side of what goes on for investing in retirement, when the market drops 20, let's say 30%, even if you're a seasoned investor, you know, you could be good to go. But with retiree, those numbers is going to affect your income, your security, your lifestyle. Many people are going to panic. They start selling at the wrong time. Others stop spending, afraid they're going to run out of money. And then some at the end, they lock in losses that they never be able to recover from. And it was Fidelity. They did an investor study in 2024 that 40% of retirees they reduced or stopped their funds back in 2022. Remember 2022, 2023 when we had a huge drop? 40% of people said, "Oh, that's too much." That's stress that you shouldn't have to deal with. All right, you've worked too hard, too long to have your retirement controlled by daily up and downs in the stock market. You don't need to have that, especially your 15, 20, 25 years saving. All right. So you need to start protecting your income from market risk. And I always tell people, look, the keys in avoiding risk, because you can't avoid it completely. It's kind of more of controlling it. All right. That's where protected income products, like annuities. I talk about annuities and all these things. They come into place. All right. Annuities, they let your money participate in the growth that's linked to the market, but it has a built-in floor that prevents losses if the market were to drop. That means if the market rises, say 20%, you have a cap, say of 12%, you're only going to get that cap, depending on your contract for whatever company. But now, if the market drops 20%, you have a 0% floor. You don't lose nothing. Your gains are going to lock in annually. The principal stays protected, and your balance continues tax advantage growth. That's huge. So that protection, right, turns volatility that's a threat back into an opportunity because zero is your hero. You're not losing anything. It's giving you what they say the power of stability. Folks, that's huge. Now, what does stability really mean in retirement? It means, look, your income keeps coming in no matter what. All right. What headlines say is right. It means that something were to happen, you could still go on vacation, you could still take care of your family, you could still sleep at night, not worrying about anything. Limra did a test in 2024. Retirees who receive at least 40% of their income from guaranteed sources, Social Security, annuities, things like that, they have 50% higher confidence in their financial well-being because they know they have a floor, guaranteed income, because it's peace of mind. It's not just emotional, it's mathematical, right? When your base income is stable, you could leave the riskier investments alone a little bit longer so it gives them time to recover, right? And that gives you, like they say, it's a win-win situation, right? So let's give a breakdown. Back in 2022, I had a client. So I want to kind of put this in perspective. What happened? 2022, had a client, 64 years old, had around 600,000 in retirements. All of that was invested risky into the markets, right? And they planned that, hey, we're going to take out 30,000 a year in income. Nothing crazy. Well, the market dropped 20% right after they retired. 600,000 turned to 480,000, but he still wanted to live off $30,000 a year, which now is going to come into a smaller balance. So that's going to accelerate the damage. Now he actually went back to work trying to recover a little bit more instead of trying to do everything, right? But let's say he put some of that money into a guaranteed income, a fixed index annuity, something where it was protected. So guess what? Half his portfolio has a floor, the other half he could still have it risky. So when the market dips, he would have had half the money guaranteed, keep the bills paid, keep everything good to go, and the other half still in the market where you could pretty much get a little bit back from those losses. So that's how you protect your portfolio's longevity, folks. You want to pretty much balance your growth, balance your security. All right. And then look, the silent advantage is tax advantage accounts. All right. I always tell people that there's a benefit to a lot of these strategies that are tax advantage, tax deferred, right? So when you have something like an annuity funded through a rollover, say you got a 401k, 403b, some of that stuff, in these kind of accounts, you could roll them over into annuities. Your money keeps growing tax deferred, meaning you're not paying annual taxes on your gains, right? So you could have that growth and have that protection. Morningstar said you could increase the portfolio anywhere between 25 to 40% over 30 years of growth compared to that taxable accounts where you're getting taxed all the time. That's a huge advantage. And that money gets to compound every single year without taking any additional risk. That's why annuities, I always talk about, it's a great product, right? Now, I always tell people when it comes to retirement, the new definition of winning in retirement is a lot of people I'm seeing, I've been licensed for the last decade, that have a shift, right? Meaning when you're 30, you're trying to chase the highest return, right? But when you're 60, winning means you're protecting your lifestyle. You're not worried about the growth. I want to protect what I have going on, right? So it's not about hitting home runs. It's about never striking out, slowly moving. That's why the modern retirement planning is less about beating the market, right? It's more about building income that you can count on 24/7, 365. That's why different strategies, that's why some of these annuities, some index accounts, they're designed to create reliable, protected growth that supports your income path no matter what happens in the market. Now that's huge. You know where your money is going, you have the protection, and look, I'm putting not all my portfolio into something. I'm putting some, so the rest that's more risky, I could still let that keep growing, right? So understand that sequence of return risk. What I said, a 15% drop in that first 2 years could shorten your retirement by 10 years in your portfolio. That's why you want to make sure you don't have all your money in risky accounts. Diversify your portfolio, folks. I've been licensed for the last 10 years. I cannot tell you how many people thought, I got this plan, everything's good to go. Something happened. And now they're panicking because guess what? What they thought they had, it wasn't guaranteed. That's why I specialize on putting stuff where you have guaranteed growth, have that guaranteed confidence, right? Market risk, it's never going to go away, folks. But if you could decide how much of it you want to worry about in your retirement, that is a huge, huge plus. So I tell people, look, if you want a call to action, right? If you're nearing your retirement or if you're already retired, and if you're worried about 2022 happening again, having your money in volatile markets, right now is the time that you should be acting. Sit down with a financial professional. Click on the link in the description below, and I can sit down and see exactly what you have going on and if anything could be fixed. And with that being said, folks, make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. And once again, ladies and gents, just here to drop a few cents. You're here to retire with Earl. and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.